Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sinan Qasim, and as always, I'm proud to be the president of our Youth Innovation Table. And so happy to see youth leaders and adult mentors come together for today's discussion on mental health and awareness. This is such an important and prevalent issue in our community and across the country and around the world. And yes, it affects our community, but it's also important to look at how it affects our youth. And I'm excited to have a great Q&A session with our amazing keynote speakers today to come up with solutions on the issue that we'll be discussing. Before we get into today's discussion and introduce the speakers, I want to go ahead and give us a moment to talk about some of the club business that we need to go over. The first thing is our Youth Innovator Recognition, and this is something that we started a couple meetings back. Last meeting, we recognized Nicole and Gianna from Project Leadership. And this meeting, we're going to be recognizing Kushi, who's on the call. And Kushi is just an amazing youth leader that's been supporting the Youth Innovation Table. And I'm going to hand it over to Isabel, who's our Director of Communications, to talk about Kushi and her accomplishments in our community.
Kushi,
Isabel?
oh, Kushi Desai is an incoming junior at Deerfield Beach High School's IB program. She grew a love for the science and the environment early in her childhood, which is why she chose the Environmental Science Magnet program at Crystal Lake Middle School. Kushi is a very driven and dedicated individual who is very passionate about correcting environmental issues. She led the school's Green Team missions in recycling, gardening, presenting at Water Matters Day, and promoting eco-friendly activities to the school body and community. Due to the increased awareness and the call for action to improve her middle school's eco-friendly culture, Crystal Lake was awarded a first place for the How Can You Go Tri-County School Challenge for the largest school water reduction. In addition, Kushi was recognized by the P3 Eco Challenge Committee for her commitment to improve our climate and received the top middle school environmental stewardship award in 2019. She is associated with Free Our Seas and Beyond in combating sea level rise.
Thank you, Isabel, and congratulations, Kushi, and welcome once again to the Youth Innovation Table. So we always like to give a recognition and a shout out to our mayor and the founder of the Youth Innovation Table, Mayor Scott Brook. Mayor Brook is not on the call just yet, but he will be on the call soon. So we just want to give him a shout out and thank him for all that he does for all of our youth and for our community. I'm going to hand it over to Miriam, who's the vice president of the Youth Innovation Table, and she's going to introduce our team and ways to get involved. Miriam?
Thank you, Sanan. So as you guys can see on the screen, this is our leadership team. So we have our wonderful president, Sanan. I am the vice president of the Youth Innovation Table. And we have our two communications directors, Bailey and Isabel. We have our director of the YIT of California, Grace. And we have our wonderful secretary, Julianne. And here are just a few ways for you guys to get involved if you want, more of a leadership role in the Youth Innovation Table. We have a few different committees that you could focus on. So you could focus on marketing and outreach, member retention and recruitment, or the fundraising committee, and just reach out to us for more information. We would love to have you.
Thank you, Miriam. We also have an adult mentor board that we're starting, and this is a group of adults and mentors who can help us outreach to sponsors. And the commitment is 30 minutes, so half a meeting, which we have every other Monday. And any adult mentors who are on the call who would like to support our youth, please reach out. Bailey put our email in the chat, and we'd love to have you join us on board. Looking ahead, we have our meeting right after this one on July 12th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And something exciting about this meeting is that the person that recruits the most attendees will receive a $25 Starbucks gift card courtesy of Scott J. Brook, PA. If we have a tie, then we'll have two people receiving two $25 gift cards. So for next meeting, make sure that you bring on your friends, family, and anyone that you know to the next meeting for a chance to win a $25 Starbucks gift card. And thank you to Mayor Scott Brook for sponsoring this initiative. For any of our adults who are on the call, if you own businesses or a company, then you can sponsor the Youth Innovation Table. We have bronze, silver, gold, and platinum sponsorships, so reach out and we'd love to get you involved in there as well. I'm going to hand it back over to Miriam to talk about how we're going to have our Q&A session today.
Yeah, so just some Zoom etiquette for our Q&A session. As you can see in the picture, if you guys want to speak up and say something, you can use the raise hand feature. You could also use some of these more options just for reactions. You could also use the chat feature if that's what you would prefer. And obviously, if you guys are able to, we would love if you could have your camera on. If not, we completely understand. Yeah.
Thank you, Miriam. And now we have our keynote speakers for today. And right when I have his picture up, and as our first keynote speaker, he joins the meeting, and that's Mayor Scott Brook. And we gave him a little bit of an introduction in the beginning, but I'm going to give Mayor Brook a chance to introduce himself. And as we do this, we're going to go through each of the speakers for today and give them a chance to introduce themselves and the work that they do in the area of mental health and awareness. Mayor Brook?
Great. I'm driving right now, so you can't see me, but can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great, Mayor.
Great, thank you. So in my role as a dad, community leader, unfortunately having lost my mom to suicide when I was 23, I'm very well connected in the area of mental wellness, and I'm committed to help break the stigma that's often associated with mental illness. And a couple of years ago, I was able to start this great organization called Mental Wellness Networking Alliance in my individual capacity. And we are in the process of becoming a 501c3. We are a nonprofit organization. And currently our vision is that we live in a world where mental wellness is equally as vital as physical wellness. So that's just a little tidbit, about my commitment, and I'm happy to share more later on in the program.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for all of the work that you do to advance mental wellness through MWNA and for our youth. We really appreciate it. Our next speaker is Ms. Jeanette Cohen, who is the Community Outreach Director at Eagles Haven. If you'd like to say a few words about the work that you do, we're so excited to have you join us and love the virtual background promoting Eagles Haven as well. Just a little bit about Eagles Haven and all of the work that you've done to advance this cause as well.
Sure. So thank you so much for inviting me and for having me at your meeting this evening. So I am the Community Outreach Director for Eagles Haven. As many of you, I hope, know about Eagles Haven, we are a wellness center that was started after the tragic shooting at MSD 3 years ago. And we really provide a whole host of classes, wellness classes for the entire community. Anybody that is still continuing to struggle with anxiety, stress, PTSD, needing any other kind of services. We have so many wonderful navigators that are here on site to be able to assist individuals and families who might, as I said, continue to be struggling. I think today is especially these times is especially hard for young people, young adults, as they navigate their way through so many challenges in today's world. It's certainly so understandable that depression is such an overwhelming issue in our community, just from the pandemic, I think. And you know, as Mayor Brook so eloquently states, how the importance of truly breaking the stigma. I grew up and had a father that was manic depressive, and saw what that was, the impact that had on my family. And I have an older son that's had some mental wellness issues himself. And so it really touches home for me as well. Again, my greatest concern is that young people are really getting the services that they need. And that's really what Eagles Haven is here for the Coral Springs Parkland community.
Thank you so much for all of the work that you do and for sharing with us today. And we're so fortunate to have Eagles Haven in our community because it's truly a gem in our community. So thank you for always sharing resources with Eagles Haven.
Thank you so much. Always here. Happy to help.
Our next speaker is Shauna, who is the Director of External Communications with MWNA, or the Mental Wellness Networking Alliance. Shauna, if you can take a moment to talk about your experiences, and especially with MWNA and the work that you do to advance mental wellness.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Shauna. I've definitely been on here before, so it's so nice to see you all again. So I am the Director of External Communications for MWNA, and I definitely see at your age and my age, we have such a high influence. You know, we have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have Snapchat, we have all these influences. So in this terms, as far as mental health goes, it's a huge impact. It really impacts us. It really influences what we're seeing and how we're feeling. So something that I like to do is make content that really helps kind of give a better image about what social media should be, what mental wellness should be, in hopes that maybe somebody will be more positively influenced by what they're seeing on their feed.
Thank you, Shauna, and for the work that you do. And I think that your perspective is very relatable to our youth as well. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Laila, who is the President of Business Development for MWNA, if you'd like to say a few words about the work that you do and even the business side of mental health, which is a very interesting part of it as well.
Of course. Hi, guys. It's really great to see you all again. I'm Laila, President of Business Development for MWNA. Really, my role is not only to be a mental wellness advocate and to use my voice to speak up for those who may not be speaking up for themselves, and really to provide some education for our community and our youth, and further us into breaking the stigma. But more on the business side of things, you know, we're very fortunate. We get to work with amazing organizations such as Eagles Haven to really help connect people in need with the proper resources. And we're also able to teach businesses and organizations how they can really make sure that their employees are in the best mental space. You know, if you're unhappy in the work that you're doing or the environment that you're in, you won't be doing your best possible job. So for us, it's really important to bring that into, you know, corporate businesses, into schools, you know, helping teachers understand their students, helping employers understand their employees. So really spreading awareness and creating a great foundation of education. So.
Thank you, Laila, for sharing, and thank you to all four of you. I think it's amazing that even though all four of you are focused on mental health, there's unique experiences that come from all of your perspectives. And what I'd like to ask all of our attendees to do is, when you ask questions, to be prepared by looking at the bios that Bailey has put in the chat of each of our speakers, by thinking about your questions based upon the experiences that all four of our speakers have shared in their introductions as well. Before we open it up for the Q&A session on Zoom, We did have some questions that came in through the registration, and while we won't go through all of them right now, I would like to start with one of those questions for each of the panelists, and then we'll open it up to all of the attendees on Zoom. So we want to start by just showing that 1 in 5 American adults will have a diagnosable mental health condition in any given year, and 50% of Americans will meet the criteria for a mental health condition sometime in their life. Half of those people will develop conditions by age 14. So this is an issue that is becoming more and more prevalent, and one of the things that's interesting is that it's becoming more and more part of community outreach more than we've ever seen before. The question that came up in the registration was, how can we increase awareness for mental health amongst our youth and community? So we want to start with this question from the registration, and then all of the attendees and the youth on the call, please feel free to use the raise hand icon, the chat, or even unmute after the panelists answer this question so we can hear your questions as well. And let's go ahead and start with Ms. Jeanette Cohen to answer this question, and maybe even talk about how Eagles Haven can have a component to this as well.
Sure. So, it's interesting to read the question because it's one that I ask myself every day in order to really try and maximize our reach to the young adults in our community. I think that really engaging young people in things that excites them, in things that bringing them together in conversations such as this that provides such an open and safe platform to be able to bring young people together and to really provide as many of our young people as possible with as much support as we can provide. That's exactly what Eagles Haven is here for, not only to be here for the faculty and staff and adults, but most importantly, and my main focus always is to really attract young people. So I kind of, in a way, throw the question back and say, as you're such an incredible group of young people and leaders, young leaders in our community, aside from TikTok and Facebook and, to me, Instagram and such, that those are, I ask you back, is that the best way and the most efficient way to reach out to our youth in the community? Because I think that's the greatest challenge. There are so many people, young people suffering, and to reach them is what is the greatest challenge. And for them to know that there is help and there is support and there are services in place, such as Eagles Haven, that is here designed specifically for them and to help them. So
Well said. Thank you.
mhm.
And Shauna, would you like to add on or share a new perspective?
Yes, absolutely. I definitely see social media being one of the biggest influences, the biggest way to spread awareness and to get through to people. If the more positive your feed is, the more positive you're going to come out. The more negative it is, the more negative thoughts you're kind of going to begin to think about, especially with comparison and things like that. So I completely agree with Jeanette. I think that if we're putting things out there that say, yes, like this is okay, it's okay to feel like this, it's okay to want help for this, I feel like we're sending out that message. That's what needs to be on our social media feeds, if I'm being honest, especially in America. It's one of the biggest problems we have in the country is our mental wellness and people not feeling like they can talk about it.
Right. And Laila?
Yeah, definitely to touch on what Shauna said. I mean, our generation has grown up in the era of technology. And I think, having everything accessible at our fingertips is amazing and helpful. But at the same time, to see comparisons, as Shauna was saying, can be very detrimental to mental health, especially at a young, impressionable age. And I think that keeping our social media positive and posting reassurance of it's okay to feel certain ways. And not only that, but here are the solutions that we can offer for those, is really amazing. And to touch on what Jeanette said, having a network and having a community where you feel like you have resources, where you feel like you have people that you can go to, is really, really impactful for our youth. And I think that if we continue to spread awareness and we're educating on the do's and don'ts of kind of dealing with mental wellness, I think that we can really make a difference.
Those are some very powerful tools. Thank you for sharing. Mayor Brook, to you on what our community is doing and what you feel should be done, and then we'll open it up to our Zoom attendees for more questions.
Great. So it's great to have everybody on the call, and thank you for allowing me to be a speaker. A lot of the difference that we're going to make is going to be one-on-one. So definitely, I utilize my social media in a positive way, like Shauna was talking about. But how I get people typically to a meeting of the Mental Wellness Networking Alliance is I call up Scott Bagoon and I say, hey, Scott, you want to come? I call up Jed Nywood and I say, hey, Jeb, you want to come? So my suggestion for you all that want to lift the mental wellness of our community, especially, peers, is contacting your peers one-on-one. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's a good friend. And it doesn't have to be somebody you think is a quote unquote leader. Just has to be anybody you care about. So what the impact you guys can have through the Youth Innovation Table or any other organizations that you're a part of to promote this dialogue about mental wellness and help break the stigma about mental health challenges can really be impacted in a great way by having direct conversation. And if somebody shares with you, kind of like they poo-poo the idea, engage them, engage them in a positive, friendly, and loving way. How come? How come you say that? And you might want to say, have you ever lived with anybody with depression? Do you know of anybody personally with bipolar or schizophrenia? And then help educate them that mental illness is not a choice, but mental wellness is something that there can be many resources for. And, just spread the word, one-on-one, as well as through social media. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love that. And that's a wonderful approach that takes both approaches and makes it the best way and the best holistic way that we can go about awareness. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to anyone on the Zoom call. If you have any questions, if you'd like to unmute, if you would like to put your question in the chat or use the raise hand function just like Kushi just did. So I'm going to hand it over to Kushi for her question or comment.
Hi, my name is Kushi Desai. I was wondering, although mental health stigma has gotten better, say from a century ago or even 50 years ago, why do you think mental health is so ostracized for when people open up about it? Is there like a pinpoint reason for it? And why are people's mentality for mental health this way?
And Kushi, who would you like to answer that question first? And that's a great question, by the way.
Miss Cohen, I feel like she'd be good to answer this question.
Great.
Thank you for your question, Kushi. So I think, and it's really quite well thought out. It's a great question. I think that there's probably more stigma because people are afraid of what they don't know. And when we don't know something, we're sort of afraid of it because we don't know what that looks like. And how when the more we evolve and know people in our own lives, friends around us, and we see that they can, assimilate into society and function well and really do things, therapies and other things that can help them, it really breaks that stigma to see that just because you have depression or manic depression or, so many other mental illnesses, schizophrenia, that it's the fear of the unknown, I think, that makes it so scary. But there are so many resources and ways to overcome that today. And so really, giving people that aren't like us a chance, giving them the opportunity to, just like we would somebody that had cancer or COVID, right? Or pneumonia, right? We may be fearful that we would get that ourselves, but knowing somebody and what they're going through kind of taps into our own understanding, to try and understand them as opposed to be afraid of them.
A great response. Mayor Brook, is there anything that you'd like to add on to what Ms. Cohen said, or anything that you'd like to add from your own perspective?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer. And I think some people assume that illness like anxiety and depression are a choice as opposed to it appearing however it has formed for someone. So in other words, so I've always been a very, very positive person. I still am. And I went through a period of depression, several years ago. So how can a person that's so positive be depressed, right? So people that don't know that much about depression per se, they may not understand how a very positive person like myself can suffer from depression. So I think a big part of it is education, right? That depression is not a choice, anxiety is not a choice. COVID has certainly helped many people understand things differently than they did before COVID. And then there's that, Kusha, you asked about the stigma. Well, I think however many years ago, if you had mental illness, it was very hush hush. And it's, you still have a civil rights movement, right? Even though the Civil War ended, 1867, if I'm right. So there's a mental wellness movement that's taking a great deal of time. And one of my goals with our Mental Wellness Networking Alliance is to really, kick up this conversation with influencers, especially young influencers like many of you, because if you're having this dialogue at 14, 15, 17 years old, guess what your parents are doing? Whether or not you know it, Sanan, when you're your parents about this evening, they're going to share with other people they know about mental illness and mental wellness and so on and so forth. And being able to have grace in California, well, now we're making connections in California. We probably don't know just how far we're reaching, but just having the conversation to make those distinctions for people is going to be very helpful to help break that stigma.
It's a very powerful way to go about it. You're absolutely right. Shauna, would you like to add on as well?
Of course. I definitely agree with everything that was said. And it definitely helps to call people one-on-one, ask them if they're okay, check in if they're doing well. It's never good to assume that somebody's doing well or, put a lot on their plate or, maybe if they don't reach out as much, get upset. I've had to learn that. I've definitely had people who had to take space and had to isolate because of what they were dealing with. And you really just have to learn not to assume, not to get angry. And at the end of the day, all you really have to do is check in and ask how somebody's doing.
And that can really make all the difference. Laila, would you like to share your perspective on Kushi's question?
Of course. Yeah, I think that all the points that have been made so far are very valid. I think that a lot of the stigma revolves around kind of the way our society feels the need for perfection and how everybody kind of feels that they need to act a certain way or dress a certain way or look a certain way. And, for a while, as Mayor Brook said, mental illness was very hush hush. And I think a lot of people looked down on it, mostly because they didn't understand it. I think there's a big educational factor there. And as Jeanette said, this fear of the unknown. So when we have this invisible illness that we don't really know about or that we can't see, I think it tends to scare some people, and we like not to talk about it or to pretend like it's not there, when in actuality, the more that we start educating and the more we talk about it, the more normalized it'll become. And the more we're able to start having everyday conversation about it without any kind of like, not wanting it to be there, it'll become more normalized. Therefore, the stigma will become a little bit less. And I think it's really, really huge educational factor. And I think that as the youth, we can really promote that and advocate for it.
Well said, Laila. Are there any other questions or comments that anyone would like to share on the topic and what has been shared so far? You can use the raise hand, you can use the chat. Koshi, I see you have your hand still raised. Is that because you have something else to add, or is that from the previous?
I raised my hand again because I just wanted to comment on all the answers that I was given.
Sure.
I loved each and every one of your guys' answers. It really opened my eyes. I feel like from the people that I've interacted with, most of the time, the people who are hurting or suffering mental illness, they are the ones who are the most optimistic or outgoing. But like, you cannot assume what's going on in the person's head, because someone might seem perfect on the outside. In school, they might seem very happy and they have other life put together, but when they go home, they might have problems that we don't know about. So I feel like we have to be kind to everybody, no matter what they seem like, because you can't just judge a book by its cover. You have to be aware of your words, because your words can become a knife to somebody, or it can become a savior to somebody.
That's very true, Koshi, and thank you for sharing that. And thank you to all of the panelists for giving your insight as well. I think at this point, I don't see anyone on the Zoom call who has a question, so we'll go back to the registration questions. But please, if anyone does, give us a Zoom hand raise or a reaction or anything, and we'll get to you. And as we go through these questions, we're going to have one of the panelists at a time instead of all of the panelists. And then when it's the next panelist's turn, if you want to share on the previous question, you're more than welcome to. So I'm going to share my screen once again. And again, if anyone on the Zoom call has a question, let us know. And the question that comes up is, what are some ways we can develop our well-being and resilience to combat mental health challenges? And this time we'll go in reverse order, so we'll start with Laila.
Okay, so I think that some of the ways that we can kind of develop our well-being and make sure that we're our best selves, I'd say for me personally, the biggest thing is organization. I think that by staying organized, and not just, in your to-do lists and things like that, but really organizing your thoughts and kind of prioritizing the things that we need to do, it's a big savior. A lot of times I think that all of us having super busy schedules and having full plates can become very overwhelming and overbearing. And by staying organized and kind of, prioritizing and taking a moment to realize that, you don't have to rush to get everything done at once, that you really can kind of take your time and provide quality work rather than, rushing to get everything we have to get done. That's very helpful. I think also finding a practice that works for you. So for example, yoga is something that I've noticed has really helped my well-being. When I take the time in the morning to start my day off by doing some yoga, I'm much more relaxed. I'm able to clear my thoughts, things like that. I think that finding the practice that works for you and applying that day in and day out is really, really helpful. You kind of just have to figure out what works the best for you. And there's so many options out there and so many things that you can do to make sure that you're in your best state. Because when your mental wellness is at its best, you will be at your best performance and really just be able to do things more effective. And not only that, but be happier in day-to-day life.
Those are some great tips. Thank you for sharing, Laila. So we want to show another graphic, and this one is pandemic causes for spike in anxiety and depression amongst adults. And amongst our youth, there are some metrics here about suicide being the third leading cause of death amongst our youth. 50% of lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age 14. 90% of those who die by suicide have an underlying mental illness. These are definitely very real, very serious stats, and they affect our community and our youth and all of us in one way or another. And the question that from the registration that comes up is, what is the best way to help others facing mental health challenges? We talked about this earlier, but we can definitely expand more upon it. Ms. Cohen, if you want to address this question.
Sure. I think what's most important is to reach out to those that might be suffering in some way. If somebody seems depressed, anxious, not really managing very well, I think what's most important is communication and contact. You know, that human contact is the most, I think, important thing, right? We've been all doing Zoom for so long, and yet, you know, even Zoom, even though we're together, there's an element of isolation in it. And you know, the power of the human connection is like none other. And I think that that's really, you're able to really make that connection and to really understand where somebody is at, what they might be going through, as Kushi so well said about everybody has a story, right? Everybody has their own experiences in life that have brought them to where they are today. And really initiating communication and healthy conversation, I think is most important.
Very great advice. Thank you.
Mhm.
So again, I always want to make sure everyone knows that if you have a question, you can let us know and we'll get to it. But for now, we'll stick to the registration questions. This next one is for Shauna. What are the greatest challenges that we face in the area of mental health and wellness?
That's a really good question. I'm like looking at it and I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. I think that especially starting at the younger age groups, we start normalizing maybe not the healthiest people in our lives. I think that's something that definitely needs to be talked about too. What contributes to mental health so often is we keep toxic people in our lives because we have love for them. I think that if you do that, you're going to find your mental health is always going to take a toll. I'm a whole believer that people can suck your energy. And I think that's something that's definitely one of the biggest challenges. If somebody, is in your life and they're kind of like leeching on you and, they're not good for you, you shouldn't keep them, and watch when you don't keep them, how much better your mental health gets. We have to normalize, loving people from a distance, wishing people well, but not keeping them in our lives. Another thing that really is a challenge that we face is in high schools, mental wellness is not talked about enough. We kind of revert back to learning about the psychological processes of mental health, and it depicts everybody as crazy. If some of you guys, I'm sure in AP Psych, if you see the patients are always depicted as crazy. So starting from your age, how it's shown is a huge issue.
That's a really great point, and it really shows how we've conformed to a reality that may not be necessarily true, and it even contributes more to the stigma, which is, like Mayor Brook, you always say we have to break the stigma, and that's what we really have to work towards. And this next question is on the flip side because, as everyone knows, at the Youth Innovation Table, we talk about challenges, but we like to talk about solutions even more. And this one goes to Mayor Brook. The question that came up is, what are the biggest opportunities in the area of mental health and wellness?
Now, another great question. You guys really are prepared for this evening. So some of them is to study mental wellness and engage in mental wellness jobs, like psychology, psychiatry, yoga instructor, right? Yoga studio owner, massage studio owner, right? So on Saturday, I'm calling all these massage places to try to get a massage and release my stress. They were all booked. Couldn't get one in. So contemplate what are some areas of opportunity for careers that are involved with mental wellness, because I think one of the next major economies, mental wellness. At this age, right, one of the greatest questions you guys ask too is, what can we do to make ourselves resilient? Well, same breath, you guys are on the cutting edge, I believe, of mental wellness as young people, so that you can actually make a difference for people that are around you, even if they don't struggle now. What if they struggle later? Because of your connections to mental wellness and the mental wellness movement, they look to you for support, for resources, for ideas. So these days, in part because of my role with MWNA and my advocacy for mental wellness, so many people will text me, call me, Facebook me, and say, hey, my daughter is suffering from anxiety. Who do you recommend? My son was abused and he finally told me, what can I do? Well, I happen to do family law for a living. So if there's a minor child that's a victim of abuse, I can make sure to get that minor child out of that environment. So that's one of the opportunities for you. Another opportunity exists. You had a Mind Over Matter, if you were familiar with that program that was led by Sean Tsoukalis and Valeria Ramirez out of Coral Glades High School. You guys can create a program and get paid. You guys can create a program and get paid for your involvement by asking sponsors through Youth Innovation Table, and then allow that to lead to you all entertaining college scholarships because of your role in the mental wellness movement here. So an opportunity you all have as leaders in the Youth Innovation Table is to work with me on a scholarship program and truly work with MWNA, especially MWNA Business, to connect the youth with corporate sponsors, with organizations like Broward Health, Baptist Health, because when you think about the spectrum of the businesses involved with mental wellness, it includes some very large organizations like hospitals. So you guys can actually be involved in this movement and in turn get money to fund your college to some extent. And besides that, just to be a leader in this movement, you're going to find yourselves making that many more connections than you ever would have not being involved in mental wellness. So it's another aspect of a difference you can make in somebody's life. And with that, I'm going to rock and roll. I've got a few things to cover before I eat my dinner. You guys have led a great meeting. And I know you have the flyer, Sinan, for the next meeting 2 weeks from tonight. And the best way to really grow everything, is, we have 18, 19 people here tonight. Make it 38 2 weeks from now. I'm here for you guys. I put my cell in the chat. And Bailey, Isabel, Miriam, you guys can call me anytime just to say hello. I'm here for you all the time.
Thank you so much for all of your support, Mayor Brook, and for joining us. And we had the flyer up earlier, but we want to thank you also for providing the sponsorship of the $25 Starbucks gift card for our next meeting and for all that you do for our youth and community.
My pleasure. My pleasure. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So as we're coming towards the end of the meeting, I want to give everyone on the call a chance one more time. If you have any comments, any questions, briefly, I'm going to give a few seconds to give you an opportunity. And if not, then we'll go to final remarks by the three panelists that we have on the call. All right. Okay, if no one has any questions, that's okay. I think we've all still enjoyed a really great discussion on this topic, and any way that we can raise awareness, and even for programs like the MWNA, Shauna and Laila, that you're a part of and run, and Eagles Haven is an opportunity that we'll definitely always take. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to each of the panelists one more time for final remarks. Anything that you feel that you want to share that maybe wasn't mentioned today, or anything that you want to highlight that was. And let's start with Laila.
So I think that we have a very powerful group of people here. And I think that being in this generation, we have all of the tools that we need to execute really advocating for mental wellness and really destigmatizing mental health. I think that if we all work together and we continue to educate our community and other communities near us, we continue to spread awareness for mental wellness in a positive light. And if we continue to really make sure that us as the educators and the advocates are doing what we say, for other people to do, if we're practicing what we preach and keeping ourselves healthy, I think that we will really be unstoppable. I think that for each and every one of you, it's really important to find what works best for you and start implementing it. Do the things that, feel good for you to help your mental health, something that Shauna had said earlier, like removing people from your life who are maybe bringing you down. Really at this age, and especially in high school, it's so important to surround yourself with the right people, do what you love, take opportunities, because, there's going to be so many doors open for powerful young leaders like you guys. And just, want to let you guys know that I'm always here as a mentor. If you would need somebody to talk to, if you need advice, we're here, and MWNA is always open for you guys. You're more than welcome to come to any meeting. And we do have plenty of opportunities for the youth to get involved. If you guys would like to help us get on a committee for writing some articles for all the publications that we have, if you guys would like to, jump on with helping us make graphics or promote or anything like that, we're always looking for involvement with the youth, but just know that we are here for you guys.
Thank you so much, Laila. And Laila, Shauna, Ms. Cohen, they all put their contact information in the chat. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to hear from you for anything that you'd like to share with them on what you're working on and how you can get involved in what they're working on as well. I know Mayor Brook also shared ways to get involved. If you're not able to get in contact with them for some reason, you can email us at youthinnovationtable@gmail.com and we'll get you in contact. But there are so many ways to get involved. And like Laila said, we have to be advocates for the mental health movement, and we all have to do something. So if you're looking for something to do, then definitely get in touch. Shauna, you're up next.
Okay. Well, this was a great conversation with you guys. I really love hearing how smart you guys all are. It makes me hopeful for the next generations to come. I really want to reiterate, please use our numbers. Mine's also in the chat. Please consider us your unofficial big sisters. We've been in high school. We've gone through it. There's so much. So some lasting remarks is, as you guys are finishing high school or going into high school or anything like that, I really urge you to consider those social media cleanses. I promise you won't miss them on your friends list. So if someone is bringing you down or not a good friend to you, the history doesn't matter. Let them go. Social media cleanse. Don't ever have someone's name in your mouth. Be smart. I know you guys are. And seriously, hit us up anytime to talk. We're all here for you. And we know how hard it is to be a teenager. So it's okay. Acknowledge that it's hard to be a teenager and you're still figuring things out. And that's okay. Always keep smiling. And again, there's my number. I hope I hear from you guys about anything you need.
I really love that you're offering your support to our youth and for anything that they need. And all three of you really appreciate that, and we welcome it. And we're so appreciative of all that you do for us. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Cohen, if you would like to offer some last words of encouragement and advice to our youth.
Absolutely. So I just want to first say how incredibly impressed I am with each and every one of you. Your commitment to wanting the world to be a better place does not go unnoticed. I have such incredible admiration for each and every one of you. And I know that you will all go on to do great and wonderful things in this world. And that brings me great joy. So I just really wanted to say that. I think that the most important thing as far as a takeaway is to really start every single day in some sort of positive note. Self-care is so important, as Laila talked about and Shauna talked about, getting rid of negativity in your life, starting your day with being mindful, a small meditation, something that reminds you about how fortunate and all the good things we have in our lives, not what we don't have, but what we all have, and to really focus on self-care and positive relationships. I think those are all great things for our good mental health, regardless of whether we're struggling or not. It just really brings great positivity, and I think positivity is contagious. And I think that, as I said, which I'm just a huge advocate for, is really reaching out to each other. And to, most importantly, I want to invite each and every one of you to Eagles Haven, because that's really where we look to connect young people. And we're specifically here for all of you. Me personally, I want you all to know that no matter when, what time, whatever it is that's going on in your lives, that there are people that care so much about what your feelings are and how we can be there to help you. And so I hope that somebody will take me up on coming for a class, just coming to check out Eagles Haven. But like I said, know that you are all so admired, and to keep really going out there and doing all the positive things that you can, and that there are so many people that care about you all.
That was a perfect concluding remark. And I just want to thank the three of you from the bottom of my heart for accepting our invitation to join us. You're always welcome to join the Youth Innovation Table. I think you already know that. And we just really appreciate all of your support and everything that you do for us. And I know that everyone on the call is also very appreciative. So if everyone who's on the call can join me in a virtual round of applause for our three panelists, this turned out to be a really inspiring and incredible discussion. So thank you so much for contributing. And we want to thank all of our members as well for your questions through registration. It really made the discussion flowing and it made it very productive. Before everyone starts to head out, we just want to end off by letting you know about our next meeting, which will be on July 12th. And this is exciting because the person who can bring the most friends with them to that next meeting will get a $25 Starbucks gift card. It has to be a minimum of 3 friends. And please, embrace that competition. And we'd love to have more and more youth join this platform as we continue to grow even bigger and larger. And that's courtesy of Scott J. Brook, PA, Mayor Brook. Our WhatsApp is tinyurl.com/YIT WhatsApp. Pretty straightforward. That's the chat where we send all of our communication. If you're not in that chat, you can put your number or email or contact in this Zoom chat, and Miriam and the team will make sure that you're a part of that. We have all of our social media accounts, so please make sure that you follow us there so we can continue to grow our platform even larger. And we have a survey, which you can let us know how we did, if there's anything that we can improve upon, or if there's any way that you think that we can get better, please feel free to fill that out. And Bailey, I think you might have that link, and if not, we'll put that in our email blast right after this meeting. All right, Miriam, is there anything that I'm missing before we head out?
No, I think you covered it.
Great. I also want to give a very special shout out to Miriam, our vice president, Isabel and Bailey, our communication directors, Grace, our director of the Youth Innovation Table in California, and Julianne, who wasn't able to make it on the call, but she is our secretary and does an amazing job. Thank you. This wouldn't be possible without any of them. Make sure you join our next meeting, July 12th. Don't forget about it, 6 p.m. Same registration, same Zoom link as this meeting, and hope everyone has a great night. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.